Okay, so JD here, and today we're going to be talking about mitochondria. And mitochondria are the powerhouse of your cells, right? They deliver high levels of cellular energy to power your mind, body, and psyche. Okay. And so what's interesting is we get a lot of questions recently about, hey, like what do you mean by mitochondrial signaling? And so today we're going to talk about the role of mitochondria, how to kind of turbocharge these little tiny blast furnaces, right? And how we can revitalize them, right? And so effectively you kind of have to start from the top, right? If you think about it, yeah, Eastern medicine refers to something called prana, the Chinese call life force chi, right? And what it is like, if you think about it from a sense of a cellular standpoint, uh, every cell in your body has to have a fresh supply of energy, right, in order to thrive, right? And so, if you think about it, the quality of our life is really determined by our emotions. If you are incredibly successful, super wealthy, and you're angry all the time, your life is anger. If you got, children, for example, and you're worried about their future, worried about, being there for your grandkids, your life is anxiety and worry. But emotions don't really exist in isolation. Like they're really heavily influenced by physiology and by your energy. And so when you're in a low energy state, that has a high correlation with negative emotions. And so just think about it, right? Like when you have a bad night of sleep, terrible quality of sleep, right? That's a low energy state. And the flip side is higher energy can spark positive emotions, right? As far as I know, and my observation. And if, when I feel like I'm rested and calm, a lot more hopeful and confident. And I think the biggest piece here is your energy is really determined by a few factors, right? So we can talk about it from a universal standpoint of the trillion or so living cells, right? It's like the fundamental units of tissue and organ and systems in your body. And kind of putting it all together, the quality of our life is the quality of life for our cells, right? And so when our cells are healthy and strong, we're fully alive. When our cells are in equilibrium, right? Or what the scientists refer to as like homeostasis, like instability, our emotional life will be balanced as well. And so we need kind of high levels of cellular energy to thrive across our mind, our body, our spirit, psyche, motivation. And so, you know, that leads to the next point of people with fast or slow metabolism, right? Our bodies are really motored and powered by a few metabolic pathways, right? And so, how they work just really simply, like when they convert a chemical or a substance into another, they regulate everything from our hormones to our sleep cycle to our immune system of systems, right? But when we think of metabolism, it's like, hey, like the most critical one is like it's like glucose, right? So your body's ability to manage sugar, and so the ability to convert carbohydrates, and sugars and energy, that lies into our mitochondria. And the mitochondria, the best way to think about it is like these are tiny blast furnaces that keep us powering through our days, right? Kind of like life force generators. And so if you have young kids, right, they're like high energy, they're running all over the place, they're turbocharged, right? Why? The mitochondria are a full blast, they're redlining every day. And it's studies have shown that like there's a high correlation, right, with the mitochondria and energy, and the feeling of being young, and perhaps when people get older, like the declines they feel, right? And so think about it in the words of it's like the fuel that powers each and every cell in our body, right? And their biggest job really is to import nutrients, break them down, and kind of turn them into complex molecules called ATP, right? ATP, like you need ATP to exert a muscle, feel hot or cold, digest nutrients, eliminate waste. Like it's basically there for everything, right? And the higher the animal on the evolutionary scale, we're not talking apex predators, but like how they are, right? The more energy large they are, the more ATP it needs to survive. So if your mitochondria are weak, if they're kind of age, there is less ATP, there's no life. And so our species really can last a few weeks without food. Or we can go a few days, 3 days or so without water. But what's interesting is just 3 minutes without oxygen with some people, right? Or 3 to 5 minutes, no oxygen can lead to hypoxia, and that damages the brain because oxygen is really needed to burn the glucose in our mitochondria and produce ATP, right? And so what's kind of a side point here is that cyanide is so lethal because it targets the mitochondria and blocks them from using and manufacturing ATP and using oxygen manufacturing ATP. What's crazy is a tiny amount, less than a drop, can kill a person in 30 seconds or less, right? And so really, mitochondria is kind of like if we can figure out how to kind of promote them, amplify them, and really kind of decipher the health of them, right? It really can have a high correlation with our health span and, and longevity, right? And so, and if you think about kind of high school biology, you think about mitochondria as these like mindless energy generators, taking carbs and fats and pump out cellular energy in the form of ATP, right? But in recent years, there's some studies from the University of California, San Diego, that mitochondria have kind of like a second role as like sensors, right? The canaries in the coal mine, so they're not like these just mindless energy generators, but they're actually our energy regulators. So they're deciding whether or not they should be energy mode or they should be in defense mode. And so they're kind of sensing various threats or stressors, and they're kind of designed to respond by turning down energy production or shifting resources towards cellular defense. So it's like hypothetically, hey, look, let's give a good example, right? And I say this to illustrate a point. If we were in a war zone right now, there was an attack in the street, the insurgents are attacking, they got poison gas outside our home in the streets, it'd be a terrible mistake to go, hey, like, let's open all the windows and get fresh air with this poison gas outside and go for a walk. The right response when you're under attack is to seal the windows, seal the doors, stay inside, lock yourself in. And that's kind of like what our cells do when they're under attack, when they shift that energy mode towards defense mode, right? Um, and your energy levels really are a reflection to the degree like of what mitochondria are sensing when they're under attack and shifting themselves out of energy mode. So the consequences of forcing your mitochondria in and out of energy mode and under attack, it's really designed kind of evolutionary just to protect that against those shifts, right? Against maybe mold toxins or protect against uh, severe weight loss, like rapid weight loss or endocrine disruptors, right? Pesticides, all these kind of environmental issues that, or microplastics, for example, that can be lodged in our fat tissue, right? And so they really kind of want to shut themselves down and shield them from exposure, right? So I think really what's interesting is like how to really kind of research ways to turbocharge it, right? And there are a few supplements, NAD plus, NMN, and resveratrol. We'll cover them in a separate video. And therapeutics, right? Like metformin and MOTS-c. And so metformin is interesting because it's like kind of like intermittent fasting and similar to intensive exercise. It stresses the mitochondria, right? So it throws the body down into hunker down kind of repair mode, and it really involves our liver, gut, muscle cells, and lowers blood sugar, right? So critical factor for anti-aging. So as opposed to insulin or other diabetes medications, it won't like force your body into something called hypoglycemia, so low blood sugar, which is can be a dangerous condition at certain levels. And so if your levels already, blood sugar, H1B1C is already healthy to begin with, metformin will keep it that way, right? And it's widely been studied for decades now. And there are some studies that show that may reduce cancer risk, mortality, and really kind of cancers and tumors for lung, colon, pancreas, and breast, right? And so there's some studies at Mayo Cancer Center, at Weill Cornell Medical College that indicate that metformin may have saved people from more cancer deaths than any drug in history, right? MOTS is really kind of interesting in that it's a mitochondrial peptide that really is, geared at longevity, health span, and it's a metabolic regulator, right? So it decreases kind of age rate, diseases, and they call it like an exercise mimetic. What does that mean? Fancy speak for what? Exercise in a bottle, right? And it has kind of some activation of something called the AMPK pathway, which mimics what happens when you exercise and we work out. So some of our clients use it when they're traveling quite a bit to preserve their gains. So if they can't work out as much, they're eating poorly, they use it. And then what they've noticed anecdotally, and this is not scientific, this is not backed by thousands of studies, but what we've noticed in our client base is that they have preserved gains when they're on the road quite a bit. We've noticed in our endurance athlete cohort, they've been able to kind of improve their cardiovascular endurance. Super interesting. And MOTS is kind of interesting because it plays a role of what regard to promoting cellular energy stability, right? And so when you think about kind of the mitochondrial peptide, another condition that we've observed that it helps out with is chronic fatigue. There are many root causes of chronic fatigue. So we can't say that it is the one, size fits all solution. However, we have noticed, we have had some tremendous results with people that have had faced with chronic fatigue, right? And so, really, it's a very interesting therapeutic. More research will be done on that, and it is available. you know, as a peptide, right? So another kind of cool piece of cryotherapy, and what's cool about cryotherapy beyond the cold is from a mitochondrial standpoint, it improves the proliferation of cells in skeletal tissue. So beyond Wim Hof, we're huge fans of his breath work practices and the fact that cold can improve kind of sirtuin activity as well, right? Improve your mood and cognition, right? There are really cool facets of cryotherapy, and we really need to do some more research here. And that leads to my next point. So, what does data say, right? And so everything we talk about has to be looked at from a clinical, from some observations from our clients, along with kind of rooted in science, right? And so, I want to kind of share some studies that we've seen talking about NAD, for example. And what was kind of cool about this is the correlation of NAD and mitochondrial function, right? And the fact that there are some precursors. So what it protects from effectively the muscles breaking down, and it also protects against the loss of stem cells, muscle stem cells, right? And so there is a correlation detects in life extension in certain animals, right? Let's talk about MOTS-C, right? And so early innings on certain studies. However, it has kind of shown, some correlation to getting fit, getting leaner, promoting your body's ability to process blood sugar, right? And it's very interesting in the sense of the fact that it starts kind of upregulating, right, at the cellular level. So more studies kind of are confirming the power of MODS-C, okay? There's another study here that talks about, again, the fact that there is a kind of exercise on a bottle, like mimetic type, factor associated with MOTS-C, right? And so if there are kind of implications in the regulation of obesity and diabetes and exercise and longevity, right? Could be a very cool therapy from enhancing and turbocharging your mitochondrial health, okay? And then this study here shows that there is a correlation between aging and mitochondrial, right? So cellular aging, inflammation, and decline in stem cell activity. Very interesting, right? And so when you think about mitochondrial health, really what we're trying to drive for is we want to have high levels of cellular energy, right? So your whole quality of life, your lifespan and your health span is impacted, mind, body, psyche, and motivation, right? So I hope that helps with regard to our understanding of mitochondria health, and it is ever evolving. And there are so many different therapies and supplements and ways to improve it. JD with Dr. Ryan's office. I will talk to you all soon.